When Iam Tongi sang that first note on American Idol, the world stopped. Millions watched as a teenager from Hawaii poured his heart out in a song that felt like goodbye and hope all at once. That performance became legend. His tears, his story, his voice, they made us believe again in the power of music and in the strength of the human spirit. But what happened after the applause ended? No one was ready for. Behind the viral moment, behind the golden confetti and headlines, there was another story, one too personal, too painful to share then. A story of loss, of pressure, of a young man fighting battles no camera ever captured. Some say he disappeared. Others say he changed. But the truth, what really happened to Iam Tongi, will leave you heartbroken and questioning everything you thought you knew about fame, grief, and the cost of dreams. The island air of Kahuku carries a rhythm of its own. Waves rolling against volcanic rock, roosters crowing before dawn, and guitars humming softly through open windows. It's here, amid palm-lined roads and the tight-knit Polynesian community on Oahu's North Shore, that William Iam Tongi was born on September 1, 2004. From the beginning, music wasn't just a pastime for him, it was part of his bloodline. His father, Rodney Tongi, was known among friends and neighbors as a man with a gentle spirit and a guitar always within reach. Late evenings in the Tongi home were filled with harmonies, island tunes, gospel hymns, old soul classics that crossed generations. Iam grew up with calloused fingers and a heart tuned to every note his father strummed. The Tongis lived modestly but richly in connection. Their home wasn't defined by material wealth, it was defined by community, laughter, and that unmistakable island sense of belonging. Iam's siblings remember him as the shy one, quiet, thoughtful, often sitting on the porch, lost in the sound of the sea and his dad's voice singing softly into the night. But underneath the peace of island life, life wasn't easy. Hawaii's cost of living had begun to skyrocket. Families like the Tongis were feeling the squeeze, rent climbing, food prices soaring. Even paradise can carry its burdens, and for the Tongis, change was coming whether they wanted it or not. In 2020, the family was forced to relocate from Oahu to Federal Way, Washington, a difficult move that broke Iam's heart. He left behind childhood friends, the only home he'd ever known, and the grounding comfort of Hawaiian life. He later told interviewers, "We got priced out of paradise." But at that time, it wasn't just about geography, it was about identity. When he left Hawaii, Iam felt as though he had left a part of himself behind. The move marked the start of a quiet storm, one that would shape not only his music but the emotional depth the world would one day witness. In a new town, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, Iam found solace in the one constant that never betrayed him, his guitar. His high school teachers in Washington would recall how his presence filled the room, soft-spoken but magnetic. When he sang, it wasn't just about the melody, it was about truth. His voice carried that unexplainable ache, something old, something tender. It was the sound of home lost and love remembered. As he grew older, that ache deepened. What no one knew was that his father, the man who had taught him every chord, was battling serious health issues. Nights that once ended with laughter and song began to end in quiet worry. Iam, still in his teens, carried it all silently. In his heart, he knew every note might someday become a memory. Music, once a joy, started to sound like goodbye. That quiet pain would become the soul of his artistry, and the foundation for the moment that would later captivate millions. When people saw Iam Tongi step onto the American Idol audition stage, they saw a young man with a soft smile and a ukulele in his hand. What they didn't see was the storm inside him. Months before that day, his father, Rodney Tongi, had passed away. The loss was devastating, not just because of the bond they shared, but because Rodney was the heart of Iam's music. Every song Iam played had his father's fingerprints on it. The guitar he held on stage? It was his father's. The chords he played? Taught by his father's hands. The song he chose? Dedicated to the man who had given him his voice. In the weeks following Rodney's passing, Iam barely sang. Family members said he couldn't even look at his guitar without breaking down. His mother, Lily, encouraged him gently, telling him that his dad's spirit lived in every string. But grief is heavy, and sometimes, even love can't lift it. Then came the suggestion that changed everything: audition for American Idol. At first, Iam refused. He felt unready, raw, and unworthy. The idea of performing publicly while still grieving seemed unbearable. But something within him shifted when he thought of his father. Rodney had always believed in his son's gift. He used to say, "You're gonna sing for the world one day, boy." And so, with trembling hands and a heavy heart, Iam decided to honor that prophecy. On the day of the audition, the world was unaware of what was about to unfold. Behind the scenes, producers noticed something special: a quiet teenager from Hawaii with a soulful voice and an old guitar.
He wasn't loud. He wasn't showy.
But there was something magnetic about him, something that made everyone pause. When he began singing Monsters by James Blunt, a song about saying goodbye to a dying father, the room fell silent. Every word cracked open the raw wound of loss, and every note carried the weight of love that transcends death. The judges, Lionel Richie, Katy Perry and Luke Bryan, were visibly emotional. Lionel whispered, "It's incredible what you're giving us." Luke Bryan fought back tears. The moment went viral within hours, not because of production or performance, but because of truth. It wasn't just a song, it was a farewell. The video spread across the internet like wildfire. Millions cried. Millions felt seen. In Iam's voice, people found their own stories of loss, grief, and healing. But amid the sudden fame, something deeper was happening to him. The audition wasn't closure, it was an opening. His father's death had become the reason he sang, but also the wound that would never fully close. That moment on American Idol wasn't just the start of his career, it was the moment his grief became art. And as America fell in love with him, few realized that behind his calm smile, the pain of absence was still very much alive. The lights were bright, the cameras rolling, and for a brief moment, time itself seemed to pause. When Iam Tongi began to sing James Blunt's Monsters during his American Idol audition, the world witnessed something beyond performance. There was no grand showmanship, no theatrical gestures, just a trembling voice, a father's guitar, and a grief so pure it pierced through every screen. The judges didn't move. The audience behind the cameras didn't breathe. It was as if the entire room understood they were watching something sacred. That performance would soon transcend the walls of the audition room. Within hours of airing, clips of Iam's audition flooded social media platforms. On YouTube alone, the video amassed millions of views within days, eventually crossing over 20 million. People from around the world, from Hawaii to London, from small towns in the Midwest to islands across the Pacific, were united in a single feeling: heartbreak and healing. The comments section became a digital confessional. Thousands of viewers shared stories of their own fathers, of losses they had never fully processed. Some wrote that they hadn't cried in years until they saw this quiet teenager sing. It wasn't just Iam's voice, it was the truth in it. In interviews that followed, Luke Bryan called it the most emotional audition I've ever seen, while Lionel Richie said softly, "You remind us why we do this show, to feel something real again." Katy Perry, visibly shaken during the taping, whispered to Iam, "Your dad's very proud of you." But beyond the tears and the viral headlines, something else was unfolding, something more personal and fragile. Back home, Iam's family sat together in their living room, watching that same footage air for the first time. Lily Tongi, his mother, wept silently. The sight of her son on that massive stage, singing with his father's guitar, was almost too much to bear. For her, it wasn't a performance, it was a conversation between her husband and her boy that continued beyond life and death. In the days that followed, Iam's phone exploded with messages. Old friends from Hawaii reached out. Teachers from Kahuku and Federal Way sent congratulations. But amid all the love, there was something almost haunting about the suddenness of it all. One day, he was a quiet student, the next, a viral phenomenon. Behind the cameras, Iam struggled to process it. In interviews, his eyes often looked far away, as though he was still hearing his father's voice in the back of his mind. "It's crazy," he said once, "because I can still feel him. When I sing, I feel like he's next to me." What people didn't realize was that the viral fame didn't ease the pain, it amplified it. The world had witnessed the moment of his grief, but the aftermath was his to navigate alone. Strangers adored him for his vulnerability, but off stage, he was still just an 18-year-old trying to make sense of loss. Still, the audition opened every door imaginable. The producers of American Idol invited him back for the next round, and just like that, a teenager who had sung to honor his father was thrust into the biggest spotlight of his life. The world thought they had seen the most emotional moment of the season. But the journey had only just begun, and it would test Iam in ways he never could have prepared for. Once the auditions ended, the real journey began. Iam entered Hollywood Week surrounded by some of the most talented singers in America. Voices that filled theaters, personalities built for TV. Yet when he opened his mouth to sing, the noise of the competition faded. His calm, unassuming tone carried a rare kind of honesty that no amount of showmanship could match. During the duets round, while others pushed for volume and power, Iam leaned into emotion and restraint. It wasn't about impressing the judges, it was about connecting. Time and again, he chose songs that reflected memory, loss, and hope. In each performance, he quietly threaded his father's presence through the melody. Even fellow contestants spoke about it. "When Iam sings, you can feel his soul," one competitor said backstage. It's like he's not performing, he's remembering. As the weeks passed, the pressure intensified. Cameras followed him constantly, producers nudged contestants toward dramatic storylines, and online commentary grew louder. Suddenly, the teenager who once sang to cope with grief was expected to deliver perfection every week for millions watching at home.
And he did, though it came at a cost.
The travel schedule was exhausting. The rehearsals ran long into the night. Iam often found himself staring at hotel ceilings, missing his father, questioning if he was ready for fame at all. Sometimes before going on stage, he'd whisper a quiet prayer, "Dad, just help me through this one." When the live shows began, his performances became cultural moments. Singing "The Sound of Silence," "What a Wonderful World," and "I'll Be Seeing You," Iam managed to balance humility with mastery. Each note reminded people why they had fallen in love with him. His voice, deep, gentle, slightly trembling, felt like a conversation between generations. But behind that serenity was exhaustion. The emotional weight of each song, the expectations, the never-ending spotlight, it all began to blur. He later admitted in interviews that he often felt overwhelmed, that fame came faster than healing could keep up. Yet, he kept going, driven by the memory of his father and by the millions of people who now looked to him for inspiration. As the finale approached, fans across America voted relentlessly. The Polynesian community rallied behind him. Hawaiians, Samoans, Tongans, and Pacific Islanders from around the world saw in him a symbol of representation. For them, it wasn't just about a TV show, it was about being seen. Then came the final night, May 21, 2023. Standing on the grand stage under the lights of Hollywood, Iam performed with the quiet confidence of someone who had already won something greater than a title. His last song brought the judges to tears once more. When host Ryan Seacrest finally announced his name as the winner of American Idol Season 21, the room erupted. Confetti rained down. His family rushed the stage. For a moment, it felt like the world stopped spinning. He smiled, that gentle, grateful smile that America had come to love. But if you looked closely, his eyes glistened with something beyond joy. They held gratitude, yes, but also a shadow of disbelief, as though he were whispering to someone unseen, "We did it, Dad." The next morning, headlines screamed. Iam Tongi makes history as first Hawaiian winner of American Idol. From Kahuku to Hollywood, the boy who made the world cry. But amid the celebration, few realized how fragile he felt inside. The stage lights dimmed, the confetti was swept away, and Iam returned to a hotel room, quiet alone, holding the same guitar his father had once played. The dream had come true. And yet, deep inside, he knew that winning was only the beginning of another, more complicated story. For a while, life looked perfect. The morning after his victory, American Idol crowned Iam Tongi as not only its youngest male winner in years but also the first Hawaiian-born and Pacific Islander champion in the show's long history. Across social media, celebrations erupted. Hawaii schools played his songs over loudspeakers, island musicians posted tributes, and fans filled comment sections with pride. When he returned home, thousands gathered to welcome him at Daniel K. Inouye International Airport. The crowd sang as he walked through the terminal, flower leis stacked so high around his neck that they nearly covered his face. News outlets described it as a homecoming fit for a hero. For a teenager from Kahuku, it felt surreal. Over the next few months, Iam rode the crest of that wave. He appeared on talk shows, Good Morning America, Live with Kelly and Mark, and performed on national stages he had only seen on television. His humility charmed hosts and audiences alike. "I'm just thankful," he would say with his shy grin, brushing off praise. "This is all for my dad." New music, new dreams. Soon after the finale, Iam released his first single, "I'll Be Seeing You." It wasn't a flashy pop anthem but a soft, nostalgic ballad that felt like a continuation of his audition. The song climbed charts, particularly in Hawaii and on adult contemporary stations, showing that authenticity still had power in a world of manufactured hits. He began performing across the country. Small festivals, charity concerts, island cultural events. Fans waited for hours to meet him, often gifting him hand-woven leis, family photos, or simple notes thanking him for helping them grieve their own losses. During interviews, he always centered his father and his heritage. "Everything I do to represent my people," he told Billboard. "To show that Polynesians, we have voices too." It was more than fame, it was a movement. Pacific Islanders everywhere saw in him the reflection of a shared story: family, faith, love, and resilience. Schools in Hawaii began using his songs in music lessons. Teachers spoke about him as an example of how culture and humility could coexist with success. The smile the world saw. Publicly, Iam seemed to be living a dream. His Instagram was filled with bright smiles, beach sunsets, backstage laughter, and endless messages of gratitude. Fans assumed the young star was thriving. After all, he was only 19, with the world at his feet and millions behind him. But privately, he began to feel a strange emptiness. The adrenaline of the competition had vanished, replaced by stillness: hotel rooms, flights, rehearsals, interviews. Without the structure of Idol, life suddenly felt quieter, lonelier. He would often look at photos of himself on stage and whisper, "I wish you could see this, Dad." That sentence became his private refrain, a mix of pride and pain, joy and longing. Fame had delivered everything he'd ever dreamed of. But in the quiet between appearances, the silence was deafening. Behind every spotlight, there's a shadow. For Iam Tongi, that shadow began to grow slowly, unseen by fans, unnoticed by cameras, but deeply felt inside. In interviews, he often spoke about staying grounded and humble, but those close to him later revealed that the transition to fame was far harder than he ever admitted. The constant travel, the expectations to smile and inspire, the pressure to release new music, it all collided with the reality of unresolved grief. Months after his Idol win, Iam's family noticed he was withdrawing more. He wasn't depressed in the dramatic sense. He still performed, still smiled, still thanked fans, but when the cameras were off, he would sit quietly, lost in thought. He missed his dad more than ever, one friend said. Winning made him think of all the things his father didn't get to see. The world saw a confident young artist. But inside, he was still the boy on stage singing monsters through tears. Fame can be lonely, especially when it arrives overnight. Strangers suddenly knew his face, his voice, even his pain, yet few truly knew him. Every interview brought the same questions about his father, forcing him to reopen a wound he was still trying to heal. He began writing new songs, slower, heavier, introspective tracks that spoke of searching, faith, and memory. But he hesitated to release them. "I'm not sure if the world wants the sad stuff again," he said quietly in one live stream. "But that's what's in my heart." As months passed, fans noticed something different. Iam was losing weight. His face looked leaner, his presence more focused. In interviews, he mentioned working out, eating healthier, trying to feel better in my own skin. Some assumed it was about image, but for him, it was survival. "Music helps me," he said. "But sometimes I just need to breathe, I need space to feel normal again." That transformation wasn't just physical. It was emotional. He began limiting public appearances, spending more time with his family, and grounding himself in his culture. The boy who had been thrust into the whirlwind of fame was now quietly rebuilding, piece by piece, away from the cameras. Yet, even as he tried to heal, whispers began circulating online. Fans speculating about his absence, about his silence, about whether something had gone wrong. Why isn't Iam posting as much? Is he okay? What really happened to him after Idol? The truth was simpler and sadder. He was trying to find himself again, reconciling grief with glory. The hardest part wasn't losing his father, it was learning how to live after. How to celebrate victories when every moment reminded him of the one person missing. He once told an interviewer off camera, "Everyone says, you must be so happy, and I am. But it's weird. You can be grateful and broken at the same time." That sentence captured what the public couldn't see, the reality behind the perfection. His rise had been meteoric, but the climb left scars that applause couldn't heal. And so, as the headlines began to fade and the world moved on to new stars, Iam Tongi began to step back, not to vanish but to breathe. The boy who had once made the world cry was quietly confronting the one truth fame couldn't fix. You can win the biggest stage in the world and still be searching for peace. The music industry has a way of reshaping people, sanding down edges, refining accents, and transforming personalities into brands. For Iam Tongi, that transformation clashed with something sacred, his identity. After American Idol, record labels and management teams were eager to mold him into a commercial artist. They saw marketability in his voice, that soulful, heartfelt tone, but few understood the cultural foundation beneath it. To them, Iam was a breakout pop-folk singer. To his people, he was more, a voice that carried the weight of islands, oceans, and ancestors. From the beginning, Iam resisted being redefined. He insisted on wearing his Polynesian necklaces, using Hawaiian words in interviews, and speaking openly about his heritage. "I don't ever want to forget where I come from," he said. "I wouldn't be me without that." But it wasn't always easy. Producers sometimes pushed for more mainstream sounds, polished radio tracks that stripped away the island rhythm he grew up with. "This one needs to sound more like Ed Sheeran," one executive suggested during an early meeting. Iam listened politely but later confided to his mother, "That's not me, Mom. I'm not trying to be anyone else." Even subtle details, the way he dressed, how he spoke, came under quiet pressure. Publicists encouraged him to play up his youthfulness, to be more active online, to post happier content. They wanted marketable positivity. What they didn't want was the quiet melancholy that made him real. The cultural tension deepened when he returned to Hawaii for his first major hometown concert. Standing before a crowd of thousands in Honolulu, the audience erupted in chants of "We love you, Iam." But after the show, he confessed to friends that he felt torn. "Back home, they see me as family. But in LA, I feel like a product." Those who knew him best noticed that he often withdrew when fame clashed with authenticity. While other winners chased endorsements and high-profile collaborations, Iam stayed closer to his roots: small shows, church performances, island festivals. "It's not about money," he told a local Hawaiian station. "It's about meaning." That choice came with a price. Some industry figures quietly labeled him too local, too gentle, or not mainstream enough. But to those who truly listened, especially Polynesian families, that humility was precisely what made him special. He wasn't chasing fame. He was defending his soul. Yet that internal struggle, between authenticity and expectation, was slowly wearing him down. The very thing that made him beloved was also the thing that made his industry journey harder. In interviews, his tone began to shift, still polite but guarded. "I'm learning," he said once, "how to keep my heart in this business without losing it." In the months that followed, the glow of American Idol began to fade, replaced by the realities of life as a working musician. The schedule was relentless: interviews, recording sessions, and promotional appearances. The industry that had crowned him now wanted to capitalize on him. For Iam, it felt like running a marathon with no finish line. His management team pushed him toward a new album, while media outlets wanted endless interviews about his overnight success. But behind those headlines were long days, exhaustion, and constant pressure to deliver songs that could chart. He began traveling constantly between Los Angeles and the Pacific. The flights, the hotels, the noise, they blurred together. While fans saw polished performances, backstage he often sat quietly, strumming his guitar, trying to feel something real again. In one candid interview he admitted, "It's weird, everyone thinks I'm living this crazy life, but sometimes I just want to go fishing and sing for fun again." That longing for normalcy revealed the growing cracks. He missed his family deeply. His mother tried to visit when she could, but schedules rarely aligned. "Fame is lonely," she said softly in one interview. "People see the stage, not the silence after." The more popular he became, the more disconnected he felt. His social media presence, though positive, was carefully managed. Every caption, every post, filtered, scheduled, calculated. He once joked, "I miss when I could post a video in my bedroom without anyone checking it first." There were also moments of personal strain. Relationships suffered. Friends back home struggled to understand the demands on his time. "He's not ignoring anyone," one childhood friend explained, "he's just tired, really tired." And perhaps most painful of all, he felt that his grief had become part of the industry's marketing. Every time his father's story was mentioned in interviews, he had to relive the loss. "Sometimes I wish people would just ask me about music," he said. "Not pain." That sentiment summed up the emotional contradiction of fame, adored for honesty, but expected to repeat heartbreak on cue. Even as he smiled for cameras, the exhaustion was catching up. He began turning down some opportunities, quietly choosing rest over revenue. Those around him noticed the change. "He just wanted peace," said one team member. He wasn't chasing the spotlight anymore. And in that quiet withdrawal, a new chapter began. One that would redefine his career and his understanding of happiness. It happened quietly, not with an announcement, not with scandal or controversy, but with stillness. One morning in early 2024, Iam Tongi woke up and realized he didn't recognize his own life. The travel, the cameras, the pressure, it all felt distant from the kid who once sang beside his father. He missed the ocean breeze, the laughter of family, the simplicity of home. So he made a decision that surprised everyone around him. He stepped back. He began saying no to certain shows, interviews, even projects that promised big paychecks. Instead, he returned to Hawaii for an extended stay, away from the chaos of Los Angeles. There, surrounded by family and friends, he rediscovered what had started it all: peace, faith, and love for music itself. At night, he'd sit by the water with his guitar, playing softly into the breeze. Neighbors said they'd sometimes hear him humming old Hawaiian songs or gospel hymns. It was healing through melody, quiet, personal, sacred. Those who saw him during that period described him as lighter. The constant tension in his eyes had faded. He started writing new songs, not for labels or charts, but for himself. Songs about his father, about growing up, about the lessons of loss and love. When asked later why he took a step back, he answered simply, "I needed to remember why I started singing. It wasn't for fame. It was for family." That was the turning point. For the first time since his Idol win, Iam felt truly grounded. He began collaborating with island musicians, mentoring young Pacific artists, and performing at local schools. He spoke to students about grief, perseverance, and the power of culture.
"Don't let the world tell you who to be," he told them.
"You already know who you are." Slowly, the narrative around him began to shift, from Idol winner to artist of heart. His music evolved, blending his signature soulful voice with Polynesian sounds, creating a bridge between past and future. It was no longer about fame, it was about truth. And as the world wondered where he had gone, Iam Tongi was quietly building something more powerful than charts or trophies: inner peace. By the end of 2024, the once wide-eyed teenager from Kahuku had turned into a reflective young man. The world knew Iam Tongi as the soft-spoken American Idol champion with a voice that could calm storms, but inside, a quiet transformation was happening. He began pulling back from the non-stop cycle of shows, interviews, and press obligations. His team had been worried. Stepping out of the spotlight could mean losing momentum. But for Iam, it was necessary. He needed to breathe again, to rediscover why he sang in the first place. "Music was supposed to heal me," he said in one rare interview, "but somewhere along the way, I forgot to let it." Instead of chasing chart numbers, he returned home to the islands. In Hawaii, surrounded by the same ocean winds that carried his father's memory, Iam started writing again. This time, not for a label, not for a show, but for himself. He started working with local producers, young island musicians, and cultural elders. His new songs were stripped down, raw, filled with the scent of rain and nostalgia. He wanted to blend Hawaiian folk, soul, and modern acoustic storytelling. His writing was more spiritual, less about fame, more about peace. One song, Makai Winds, was written entirely in his backyard, inspired by the nights he spent staring at the horizon, talking silently to his dad. It wasn't meant for release, but when he played it at a small Honolulu charity event, it left the crowd in tears. Clips of that performance quietly spread across social media, reminding fans that the heart behind his Idol debut was still there. By early 2025, Iam was channeling his growing platform into something larger than himself. He began advocating for music education in Pacific Islander schools and launched a small foundation in his father's name, one that provided instruments and lessons to kids in rural communities. He also became vocal about mental health in young performers. He shared candidly that after Idol, he'd battled periods of emotional burnout, and sometimes, a heavy sense of disconnection. "Everyone thought I was living the dream," he said. "But some nights, I felt more lost than ever." It was through that honesty that fans began to connect with him again. Not as a celebrity, but as a human being. When people asked him whether he missed the fame of Idol, his answer was always the same. "Winning Idol wasn't my destination, it was just my doorway." He wanted to be remembered not for the confetti moment on television, but for what came after, his ability to stay true to his roots, to bring island culture to the mainstream without losing its soul. He performed at community events, in churches, and even small bars in Kahuku, always reminding himself that every song began with one purpose: connection. In interviews, he spoke of wanting to produce a collaborative album with other Polynesian artists, a project that would highlight how the ocean connects us all. It wasn't about competition anymore. It was about creation, healing, and passing on stories through sound. As the world grew quieter around him, so did Iam. He no longer measured success in sold-out arenas but in moments of stillness, like watching the sun dip below the Pacific, feeling his father's presence in the wind. His mother once said, "He's finally found peace, not in the noise, but in the silence." But just when it seemed like life had balanced out, just when Iam Tongi appeared stronger, calmer, and more grounded, the truth began to surface. The story no one knew was finally beginning to unfold. And it wasn't the ending anyone expected. It began quietly, rumors circulating in fan forums, whispers of cancelled performances, and sudden social media silence. The fans who followed Iam closely noticed it first.
His posts stopped.
His scheduled summer tour dates were quietly removed from the website. At first, everyone assumed it was rest. Or maybe a break to record his long-promised debut album. But those close to him knew something wasn't right.
The hidden weight.
Behind the calm smile, Iam had been fighting through something he'd kept private for months. The pressures of fame, grief, and expectation had piled up silently. After years of carrying the emotional weight of his father's passing while trying to make everyone else proud, he was exhausted, spiritually and physically. He He had started therapy quietly, and while it helped, the emotional toll ran deep. Sometimes I'd be on stage, he confided to a close friend, and I'd feel my dad's presence so strong it would break me mid-song. But I'd still smile for the crowd. When his family finally encouraged him to step away from public life for a while, he agreed. But what they didn't expect was how much of the spotlight he would leave behind. Months later, when Iam finally broke his silence through a heartfelt video message, fans were stunned. It wasn't a press release or a polished media moment, it was just him, sitting by the beach, guitar in hand. His voice trembled as he spoke. I think sometimes people forget that behind every story you see on TV, there's a real person. I've been struggling. I've been trying to find my balance again. I needed time to heal, not just from losing my dad, but from everything that came after. The confession left his audience heartbroken. They had seen him as the symbol of perseverance, but here he was, fragile, open, and deeply human. He revealed that he had spent months dealing with anxiety, self-doubt, and the quiet fear that his success was only temporary. The fame that once lifted him was also what began to crush him. My dad wanted me to sing because it made me happy, he said softly. But somewhere, I started singing just to keep his memory alive. I forgot to live my own life. That moment, raw and unfiltered, marked a turning point not just in Iam's career, but in how the world saw him. Fans who had admired his strength now wept for his vulnerability. The heartbreak wasn't a scandal, it wasn't about downfall or controversy, it was about truth. It was about how even the most beautiful stories carry pain beneath them. After that confession, Iam announced that he would be taking an indefinite break from music to focus on his family and mental health. The industry was stunned. Here was one of Idol's most promising stars, walking away from it all. Yet, in that silence, he found his truest song. In the months that followed, he spent time reconnecting with nature, mentoring young musicians, and simply living quietly in Kahuku. The heartbreak the world saw wasn't an ending. It was the shedding of an old life, and the start of a new one. My dad used to say the best songs come from broken strings, he told a local reporter. Maybe now, I finally understand what he meant. And with that, Iam Tongi, the boy who sang for his father, became the man who finally sang for himself. Time has a way of softening even the hardest edges of heartbreak. For Iam Tongi, the years following his public confession were not about running from his pain, but learning to live alongside it. He began to understand that healing doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like silence, reflection, and the courage to admit that you're still figuring things out. If Iam Tongi's story touched your heart, if you felt the pain, the hope, and the light behind his voice, then make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with others. Help keep his message alive, that no matter where life takes you, you can always come home, to your music, your family, your truth. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the ones that make headlines. They're the ones that remind us to keep singing, even when it hurts.